Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Dr. No from 1962. So yes, we are back. Bond is back, and we are here once again to review the entire James Bond series. And yes, of course, starting with Dr. No, the official first James Bond film, as we know. And yes, this is going to be great. I cannot wait to kind of explore once again this series. This whole entire franchise, at least the original official 24 James Bond films will be reviewed, and of course, when I see it, No Time to Die, and yes, this is very, very exciting, of course. 2 years ago, pretty much, around about now, 2 years ago, of course, I started my channel really, with the James Bond reviews, and Dr. No, of course, was my first video, that's currently on my YouTube channel, that is yes, Dr. No, and of course I've been saying for a while, I've done a video recently as well to announce this series, I was very much looking forward to, and yes, to kind of once again go through the entire franchise, and yeah, who knows, I might review Never Say Never Again, and Casino Royale spoof as well, but for now I can confirm I will be reviewing the original 24, and of course when it's out, when I see it, the official 25th James Bond film. But yes, Dr. No, of course, wow, just a truly great film in my opinion. And yes, this film, of course, this review will have spoilers. So if you've not seen Dr. No, definitely recommend watching the film. For the record, I think it's a great film. I think it's not quite top 5 Bonds for me, but it is one of the best Bonds. That's just in my opinion. I think it's truly a great film, action thriller. Just a charming film. And if you've not seen it, of course, I highly recommend it. And then, of course, come back to this review. But yes, rewatched it again last night, and just a wonderful experience. Once again, of course, this is the one. That's just. It's so unique, of course, directed by Terence Young, also directed, of course, From Russia with Love, the next film in the series, which I think is even better than this, personally. And yes, this film, of course, marks the first, James Bond actor being Sean Connery, who's just, Sean Connery is just one of my favourite actors of all time, and I think, for the record, he is Bond. That's not to discount any of the other Bond actors at all. I think Daniel Craig, Timothy Dalton, all these ones, they're so great. George Lazenby as well. He doesn't get too much, positive kind of reaction, but I think he is great for the one film he was in. And yes, I think that despite that, I think Sean Connery for me is the best James Bond, and I think this film here, it's just so much came together here for me, just so wonderfully. It's not for me as good as From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, but it's one of the great Bond films for me, and I think it's just a stunning film. What an introduction! A very once again appreciating the kind of gentle, perhaps breezy introduction to Bond. I think it's a very gradual film. It's very breezy, very relaxed. It is, of course, very tense. It's a stunning action film. Kind of the comedy, of course. Which Terence Young really wanted to kind of focus on. With this film, he didn't want it to kind of come across too serious. So there's, of course, a lot of comedy in the film, which works so well. And I think just so much coming together here to create just a wonderful introduction to the series. This is just such an investing film for me. It's not everyone's kind of favourite Bond or anything. It's not maybe as popular as quite a few of them, but I think it's one of the the best Bond films. As I say, it's not kind of top 5 material, but it is just a stunning film, and I think on this rewatch, just actually loving it a little bit more than my last watch. Really stunning film, this, and I think I can't express enough how much I love this film. It just is a wonderful, charming film. It's tense. It's full of great action. Certainly The performances, Ursula Andress, I think she's great in this film. Of course, Honey Rider, the official, of course, original Bond girl, in the series, and of course John Kitzmiller, really really enjoyable in this film. Joseph Wiseman, of course, as of course Dr. No, is good. I think, once again, I kind of. My mind has not changed. I think he's definitely slightly a disappointing villain. For the film, he does only kind of appear in the last 20 minutes or so, and I think actually one of the conversations, the main conversation, of course, with Bond, around the table, towards the end of the film, is actually a very very compelling, piece of cinema there. I think the writing, in this film, once again, I picked up on just how great actually the script is. It's a really really investing. Kind of layered script at times. I do actually think that Ursula Andress, Honey Rider, is actually a very well written character, and yes, this kind of conversation, for example, with Dr. No, is actually very very compelling. But the actual, the character of Dr. No and maybe the performance, is not perfect. It's not, one of the best, Bond villains. It's definitely could have been better. I think that's one of the very few flaws that I have really with this film is the actual villain, and just the kind of in particular the last sort of 10 minutes to this film, when they of course escape from Crab Key Island. That's and the kind of base there. It's definitely slightly disappointing, because the rest of the film, up until this, is absolutely stunning, in my opinion. I think it's just one of them all-round great films. This kind of spy thriller, action, of course, romance, and just I think it's just kind of energetic adventure film. I think I love how it becomes more of an adventure film as it goes on. It starts off very very kind of very very small scale, you could say, and just opens up as the film goes on, and the scope to this film really really wonderful, of course. But yes, the performances to this film, I think really everyone is very very good, at least, and Dr. No is not great, but I think not one of the worst films or anything like that, but yeah, could have been improved a little bit there, but I think everyone else, especially of course Sean Connery, is absolutely legendary in this film. This is one of the best kind of debuts, I think, to a character, really, especially in a kind of in a franchise. This is just really, I think, perfect. This performance here really is, and it's bettered, I feel, in From Russia with Love, in Goldfinger. Slightly, I think Connery, of course, as well as admitting it, he did slightly lose interest, you could say, after that, and I think he regards, From Russia with Love, as his favourite in the series, of course, and that is my favourite, really, of the the Sean Connery films. But I think the performance in this film, is just absolutely stunning, and this character, he's introduced, just before the 10-minute mark. Really, you have this kind of these opening threads. Of course, the main plot, to this film, I couldn't go into detail, because we'd be here all night, really. But it is kind of similar to a lot of Bond films in the plot. Of course, the main kind of initial thing that sparks, of course, the appearance of Bond, as this fellow agent, of course, who's, disappeared. We do see him, of course, getting killed, and his secretary, of course, and yes, Strangways, he is the one that is kind of mentioned quite a lot, in the film, especially early on, and Bond is basically investigating, as we know, and of course he does, stumble onto this whole kind of, this mission, of course, in the end, we know Dr. No is trying to basically sabotage, this missile launch. It's definitely it's a plot, of course, that's in many Bond films. Really, kind of similar kind of things here going on. Global world domination. Things involving missiles and stuff. It's very a very similar plot, of course, to many of the Bond films. But once again, really just got so invested in this one. It's not about the actual plot, on paper, really. It's about how the story is told, just like cinema is, but this one, I think really treats the the kind of the plot as something that's not taken too seriously, overly seriously in that sense, of course, because Terence Young did want to kind of infuse this comedy, and it's not meant to be this completely threatening kind of occurrence in that sense, but it is definitely when it needs to be taken seriously, and I think just a really investing piece of cinema here. The narrative is just I think the way that this plot unravels is just very, very investing indeed. I think it's very humorous, of course, but it is, as I say, when it needs to be taken seriously, and it's something that's just so interesting. I just got invested in really all of this film. The ending kind of act is the one that's really flawed a little bit, but again, it's nothing too major. It's just definitely worse, than the rest of the film, being up to this point. But it's still, even that, the final act overall is actually better a little bit than I remembered. And I think this is just a stunning film. I think the initial kind of breezy, as I say, relaxing introduction to this series. The first act is very, very of course it's very tense. It's got its moments of chase scenes and stuff, for example, fist fights perhaps, but it is very, very relaxing and gradual, and it's just so charming, this film. Of course, the title sequence as well. We kickstart this series with a legendary title sequence. This, of course, is just stunning. It really, really is. This typography, of course, very, very you could say simple compared to the later, of course, intro sequences, but it is absolutely stunning. And Maurice Binder designed this sequence, of course, and just this whole kind of this idea, of course, of the gun barrel sequence, of course, in every single James Bond film, of course, as well. Binder, coming up with this idea, of course, it absolutely just is so unique and just epic. It really is epic, of course. And Monty Norman, as we know, originally believed to write, and still credited as writing the James Bond official theme, and of course, but there is a kind of debate, where John Barry actually wrote, as well as he did arrange this kind of this theme and stuff, but there is kind of a debate as well, who actually wrote this theme. But that's something that is just debated, and of course the actual credit goes to Monty Norman. But yes, this theme is, I think one of the best, in cinema, and I think as well the other songs in the film, Under the Mango Tree, which is played quite often, of course, until especially in that massive sequence, the very, very famous, iconic, of course, introduction of Honey Rider, and that is, of course, just such a great moment in my opinion. Very, very just a charming moment, of course, very, very joyous moment, and of course hilarious. Sean Connery actually singing as well. After Ursula Andress comes out of the sea, and her character is singing. We have Honey Rider, of course. We have Sean Connery also singing, joining in on the song, which is absolutely hilarious, and it's always funny to see Sean Connery do different things, in the franchise, and this is definitely for me one of the funniest moments, really. But it is just that whole kind of moment, that whole moment there is just so great, and the whole kind of sequence on the island, actually, when they arrive at Crab Key Island, for me is when the film really is at its best, actually, and I think it's better than the previous segments of the film. I think it actually picks up even more, and it actually reaches a high point, when these three characters, quarrel, of course, John Kitzmiller, basically along with Honey Rider and of course James Bond, and they're all kind of on this island, and they're kind of just kind of interacting, adventuring through, and of course getting chased, of course, by enemies. And this is when, for me, the film is at its best, of course. And of course, there's a kind of many moments in this film that are actually very, very human, I feel. And of course, the death of Quarrel is one of their moments. You could say it really is just a very sad moment. It's the one that, once again, I kind of reacted. No, of course, it can't be. But yes, unfortunately, the death of Quarrel does happen, and it's kind of towards the end of the film. The final act, of course, is more of the showdown. The kind of culmination, of course, of this base, and of course course, Dr. No, officially being shown in the flesh. Of course, you do hear this character, kind of speaking to different people throughout the film, but you never actually see him until the final act. And I think does an amazing job of just kind of building this character up and building the mystery, and basically, yeah, it's just adding this kind of mythic status to this character, and just I think it's a great way to kind of finally reveal the character in this final act, of course. But when he is revealed, again, slightly disappointing, but not a bad villain at all. Definitely, one of the better Bond villains. He's not one of the best for me, but he's not. Again, he's not one of the worst at the same time. And I think the actual some of the conversations, as I've said, between him and Bond, actually very, very compelling, quite scary, of course. And one of the moments I love that I kind of forgot about is the kind of the way in which Dr. No tries to entice Bond into joining Spectre, and this is one of the amazing things about this film is it's one of the later kind of novels Ian Fleming wrote, and of course originally Thunderball was meant to be the first actual Bond film. Didn't come about, of course, but yes, this film is later on, and we do actually get a mention of Spectre, so it's great to kind of that is kind of in this film. So many elements kind of in this film that would kind of appear in every single film, really, or most of the franchise. You've got, of course, Moneypenny in this film, Lois Maxwell, and of course you do have Bernard Lee as well as M, and very, very enjoyable, a great actor. He would be in so many films, and of course we also have this kind of this character, that is kind of basically is Q, but not quite. I kind of say that it's not the same, of course, actor Desmond Llewellyn, who would kind of go on to be in so many of the Bond films, quite a few decades here, being the character of Q, and yes, also the fact that you don't quite have this character of Q, in its true form in this film. It's very you could, yes, it is Q in many regards, but it's not quite in that sense. And I think it's kind of interesting to see, but really from Russia with Love is the one where Q in his true form, and actually established as this character fully, I think is that film. And of course the actual the actor for me who played that character, that great character, of course. But you have so many things, elements, of course, these things that would be in the rest of the series, and it's just so amazing to see, and how it's kind of very, very subtle, this film, very grounded, very very I think just patient filmmaking here. It's stuff that doesn't go too far, of course. As much as this is not a film that I prefer to all of the rest of the Bonds, after From Russia with Love, but it's definitely before the franchise kind of began, really, and kind of became this you could say at times more silly, definitely silly franchises. It's not quite that kind of that tone that would be in a lot of the other films. Goldfinger really is the one that really went full on with the kind of the comedy, and you could say the silly nature, of course, at times working perfectly, at other times of course leading to Bond films that aren't so great, but Dr. No, From Russia with Love, the ones that really very, very unique, just before really it actually really became a franchise, you could say. And of course that'd be so interesting to talk about Goldfinger again and From Russia with Love. But these two first Bond films, they're certainly more grounded, you could say, thrillers, less over the top, not necessarily better than all of them, of course, for me, but I do think it's very, very just special to kind of see this initial tone and just kind of style, you could say, and the way that the kind of the thriller aspects are treated. I think is more definitely more kind of Hitchcockian than kind of Bond, you could say, in many regards. But at the same time, the style that's established in this film is just stunning. It really, really is. Just this kind of cool, just charming character Bond. At the same time, ruthless character who doesn't kind of hold back. Certainly in the fight scenes, of course, and it's this ruthless, kind of killer here, and but at the same time, I think Sean Connery brings this kind of innocence, you could say, to this character. And I think Sean Connery is just, as I've said, one of the best actors, really for me in cinema. I think, and this initial kind of portrayal of this character, it's just, it literally is, like he was born to play James Bond. And I just think this kind of, this initial, this combination here of this cool, stylish, kind of charming, kind of character with this ruthless attitude, the way, of course, he is portrayed in fight scenes, and Sean Connery's just his physical, kind of side here. Sean Connery is just, of course, quite a presence in it with all of his films, and this combination here, as I say, is just so perfect. It really is, and just even better in for example, From Russia with Love and Goldfinger. Again, very, very different in Goldfinger, more playful, you could say, and more kind of as a film, maybe he's more bumbling at times, and the golf scene, for example, one of the legendary moments in Bond, that's maybe an example of that. But this film, is really something it's so special to see, and what an actor, Sean Connery is, and how he perfected, in my opinion at least, this role. Initially, is just so great to see, and I think really this film is just edited so well, indeed, and just very, very low budget, and of course these many facts, of course, that I could go through, for example, with the whole kind of the base, you see basically the aquarium, and that's kind of actually enlarged stock footage, would you believe, and it's just, it's goldfish and stuff, really interesting, amazing facts here, you can kind of go through, it just kind of adds to this whole kind of wowing factor. Very, very small budget here, before the franchise really had begun, and what a great film it is. It's something that just, of course, is helmed by so much great talent. The casting is brilliant, especially of course Sean Connery. You've got John Barry, you've got Monty Norman. You've got this passion, really, this kind of this will to create this series. Of course, cinematically, it's just really is. It's a wonderful film, and of course, leading on to one of my absolute, definitely top 5, somewhere in there, for sure, franchises, in cinema, and that's overall, of course. Not every single Bond film, of course, I like. Some of them I actually really dislike. A few of them, but I think as a whole, it just is one of my absolute, kind of obsessions, really. One of the most, for me, legendary creations in cinema, and this film, the way it escalates, the way it kind of, with ease, really tells a story, and it's never confusing. You have to, of course, focus on this one more than some of the other Bond films, in terms of the plot and maybe the twists, the reveals, of course, and how it kind of subtly, kind of places emphasis on certain characters, certain moments, but it's a one that by the end, very, very rewarding, at the same time, one that really is just so investing. The action, of course, the fist fights, very brutal, indeed. And this character, James Bond. This character is of course, everyone knows he's a flawed character. He's got his traits, that aren't so great, of course, but he is at the same time very charming. He's always been charming. Every single Bond actor, has brought something, I think, unique to this character, and something, Roger Moore, more kind of playful, more kind of smooth, you could say, less of this ruthless character, and you've got so many different interpretations, of course, and Sean Connery, is this character, is this actor, of course, who plays this character, more ruthlessly, you could say, than quite a few of the Bonds, but at the same time, this charm, this kind of, this coolness, this suave attitude is just so enticing, and his interactions with so many different characters, even these, you could say, minor characters in the film, are just so enjoyable, and just the way we see him just lying on the bed, perhaps just kind of going about his kind of his very, very you could say, small moments here, definitely it kind of it just expands them, really. It's a very, very interesting film, and it really doesn't straight away jump into the kind of the full-on action, and kind of reveals. It really, really takes its time, and I love every single moment, really, of this film until that final definitely 15 minutes, but especially the last 10 minutes, when they're kind of escaping, and the actual, I must say the ending itself is, I expected, because once again, I just loved the kind of interaction. Actually, I think this is a really, I loved this romance, this relationship between Honey Rider, of course, the Bond girl of the film, and of course Bond, and this actually the exposition for her character is great. It really adds a lot of emotion and struggle and just depth to her character. She really is actually a really, I think she's a great Bond girl, and one of the best, really, one of the top 10, definitely. And I think the interactions were just great. The chemistry was there. It's very, very sincere, I felt, and just very warm relationship. But the ending, it's kind of the rest of the team. They kind of rescue mission here. They come in and kind of they all kind of look on and kind of disturb Bond and Honey Rider, and it's very, very just a strange moment for me. And the fact they didn't really share too much dialogue at the end there, that would have been nice, but again, it's mainly that last 10 minutes or so that just kind of brings the film down, from being a possible quite possibly a masterpiece, actually, but it's not far off. It's certainly a film that doesn't really taint my enjoyment too much, but this film, is a film that I truly adore, and I think it's this grounded, tense, classic thriller. It really, really is action film. While also kickstarting a franchise that is, of course, very, very different. For different films, many, many different styles. Feelings, of course, interpretations of Bond. But this one, is one of the great ones for me, and I think Sean Connery, Ursula, Andress, of course, John Kitzmiller as well. Great, great actor. In this film, I think just so enjoyable. I love the initial kind of feeling that these characters are villains. Involving, of course, Quarrel, and the fact that he's really with them for the rest of the film is just so charming, so enjoyable. I love the kind of escalation and the progression to this film, involving every single character, really, and it's just brilliant. This film, Bernard Lee, his presence is felt, straight away. This initial kind of relationship with Moneypenny is established without going too far, like some of the films did, in the future. This is really, really such a pleasing film to see. It's not my favourite Bond, but it's one of them Bonds I absolutely love, and it's definitely in my favourite films list somewhere. It's one of the films that really I love, truly, and it's just a legendary film in my opinion. It's got so much of Bond in there, but it's also kind of something very, very unique, and it's its own thing, really. It's much more grounded as a thriller, as an action film. It's kind of the way the film progresses. It really is very, very different to kind of future installments, but it's just an epic film. Romantic film, of course. Very humorous film. It's definitely got its over the top moments, but it's very, very kind of grounded, contained, focused on the narrative, the characters, the plot. But it's not a plot that's treated in a way that's throwaway. Again, it's not meant to be taken fully seriously. It's not meant to be a film where this kind of threat that's involved is meant to be completely threatening, terrorizing perhaps to the viewer. But it is, at the same time, it's definitely treated with enough kind of seriousness to actually kind of, at least for me, to get invested in, to get kind of wrapped up in this plot, and to kind of get very, very intrigued by different moments that lead to the final reveals, of course. And then, of course, the base, as we know, is destroyed, and of course they get away at the end. And I think it would have been a great ending if they just kind of remained on their own there. Honey Rider and Bond, and a bit of dialogue there, perhaps. And yes, but the ending, is not one of my favourites. That's for sure. It's not an ending I feel too strongly about. The actual ending there, but the rest of the film, once again, it's just even better, really, for me than I remembered. This is just a stunning film. The way it's directed, the style, is not too much. It's just enough to kind of establish this character of Bond. This the theme, of course, that plays, at different moments in the film. Epic moments here, and just some, it makes me smile. This film, these moments, and this character, this character that I root for, who, is not exactly, a perfect character. Of course, he's one that is very, very flawed, as a human in his nature, that is, but one of the best characters in film, and actually, I think really along with Indiana Jones, the best action hero, of all time, really, really just absolutely legendary. And yes, Doctor No is a great film in my opinion. Definitely one of the better Bonds in this franchise. And just the whole look of the film, the look and feel of this film, the style, of course, production design as well. Ken Adam, really stand out despite the budget, being very, very low, really, all things considered, for this kind of film. Really is just a wonderful film to look at visually, and this on location, Jamaica, combined with these, of course, the studios, of course, as well. It really is a wonderful film in its visuals, the editing, these action sequences, the car chases. I personally think, it's also great. It really, really is the moment, of course, when that car, rolls off the cliff and explodes, sets on fire. Absolutely amazing. This is just so good. The initial arrival to this Crab Key Island, the way it's built up, prior to this, you've got the moment with the tarantula, absolutely hilarious, and just, so tense at the same time, it really, really is. And, Sean Connery really sells every moment, even elevating the final act, which I think is written at times really, really well. The character of Dr. No is very, very well written indeed. The performance, personally, I feel is a bit of a letdown, and the actual way the character, really was definitely kind of under par compared to how he was built up. He's really built up, maybe overly built up, to the point where he really had to be, this great, kind of, oh wow, Bond villain. Wasn't quite there. Not one of the best in the series, but definitely not one of the worst. I do like the villain. I think Joseph Wiseman gives a good performance. A solid piece of acting there. Just not everything kind of not anything stand out here. But it's a great film. Even the final act I really, really like. Just not kind of to the point of loving like the rest of to the level of the rest of the film, but this film, is just so wonderful. It's directed so wonderfully by Terence Young, just a great individual. The kind of collaboration, we must say, whatever you kind of way you look at it, of course. The debates, of who wrote the theme, but this collaboration at least between Monty Norman and, of course, the great John Barry, one of my favourite, film composers, of course, of all time, top 5, for me. But yes, this collaboration, you've got so much talent here. You've got Bernard Lee, you've got Lois Maxwell, you've got Sean Connery, of course, as Bond. For me, the best, James Bond actor, and this is one of his best roles, in my opinion. It's definitely. The series takes a bit of a downhill in terms of this sort of thing here after Goldfinger, in my opinion. But it is these initial 3 films, and Sean Connery in these 3 films, is absolutely, I could not ask for more. This is just, it's so pleasing. It's film magic, really. It really, really is. And of course, the next 2 films in the series, I love even more than this. But Doctor No is such a great film, it really is. I can't stress that enough. I think this is just, if it was one of my loved films, really, definitely on my favourite films list, whether that be, whatever number that is, it's definitely, at least in my top 500 kind of thing, this massive list that I'm compiling, and eventually that'll be 1,000, that list that I'll kind of, have. But yes, Doctor No is one of them films I absolutely love, and who knows, it could actually, It could, I'll say it now, it may or may not, kind of possibly move up, a slot in this ranking. There's no way I'm going to kind of pass up the opportunity to do another ranking when the new film comes out, of course, No Time to Die. But Doctor No, in that sense, it could actually move up, maybe a slot, perhaps. But again, it might not, when I rewatch a couple of the Bonds. But it's a film, in that sense, I think I loved, up until this point, but I love it even more now. And yes, my final rating for this film is an extremely high score of a 96%. So that is an increase from last time around, which was already a 95. You know, and that means, you know, a brilliant piece of cinema that I, you know, absolutely love. There's no films that I give a 95%, you know, to that I don't love. That's for sure. And this film, I think, is the 96 mark. But so officially, you know, that is definitely that is actually officially kind of a 10 out of 10 from me. You know, if you will, 5 stars instead of a 4.5 or a 9 out of 10 in that sense, because, you know, if I'm rating things, you know, different sites, for example, IMDB, you know, a 10 would be 96 for me or above, you know, that rounding there, and a 95, of course, would be 9. So officially now, I do give this film, you know, that kind of status, you know, 5 stars or 10 out of 10 kind of thing there, and I think it truly is a film that I love. It's a charming film, adventurous, energetic film, but again, really patient film. You know, I really appreciate this film so much. It's got the subtlety, with the kind of campy charm at the same time, perhaps with some of the banding together, which I just love, you know, I really do, and the action, you know, has been bettered in the series, but at the same time, you know, in itself, great action, in my opinion. Of course, the moment Dent is, you know, Professor Dent is shot, you know, in that room there, it's a legendary moment. It's so, you know, the presence of Sean Connery is felt throughout, and it's this ruthless, you know, kind of cold, perhaps, you know, stance that he has, combined with that actually underneath warm, you know, charming, you know, kind of, you know, feeling you get from this character. You know, Sean Connery is just legendary. He is this tough, you know, ruthless guy, you know, as Bond, but at the same time he brings this, you know, really up there with the most charming you know, actors. He is Bond, and he's my favourite, the original, and also the best for me. And yes, Dr. No, the original, not quite the best, but one of the truly great films, you know, in this series. As I say, not every film in this series is great, you know, for me, but this film certainly is, and I just had a great time with this once again. It's this very relaxing, as I say, comforting feeling. You know, it's the one that kind of where, you know, different character moments are so felt. You know, I think Honey Rider, personally for me, is a great Bond girl, and Ursula Andress gives a great performance. Of course, she is dubbed, but you know, the actual performance, as we know, is you know, it's something separate, and that is for me great. I think this character. I really took to this character. And it's just the exposition, of course, the way I get invested, you know, in this character of Honey Rider, and the way I want to kind of see this romance. You know, another film perhaps. You know, that's a great thing. You know, that's a great sign. You know, of a great romance is if you want to see more of it. You know, and we want to see, you know, this continue maybe in another film. But of course, in Bond films, usually at least, you know, the characters. You know, the Bond girls are, you know, just in that film, and you know, it's sad to see. You know, I think I could have wished, you know, for a better ending there. You know, I could have hoped a little bit differently there. It could have ended, you know, just for my liking. But again, this film overall is so great, and really the final act, but mainly just the final. No, really the final 10 minutes or so that kind of lets the film down a little bit. You know, from being this, you know, I think possible masterpiece, quite easily, really. There's many films you know, I've given higher scores to and stuff, but you know, it really could have been up to that level actually. But it's just that last, as I say, sort of 10 minutes or so, and this ending. You know, the ending I'm not the biggest fan of. The actual way it ends, and a bit kind of throwaway, but kind of silly in a way that it's kind of it was very unnecessary. But again, this film will wrap up, you know, unfortunately, but yes, you know, we have 23 at least more Bond films to talk about, and of course, I can't wait. You know, join me, of course, if you want, you know, on this series, kind of this journey here. You know, of course, if you've seen Bond films, you can comment. If you want to rewatch them, you know, around about now, that's great as well. If you already in the process, you know, I know a lot of people who are, you know, kind of in the process of rewatching the entire, or just, you know, various Bond films, you know, perhaps you can comment there as you're going through, and we can have discussions. Or simply, yes, if you just want to talk about Bond, once again, here we are with these videos, and the comment section should be a great time. Respectful opinions and great discussions, hopefully there. So yes, can't wait to talk about From Russia with Love. That is a masterpiece. That is, of course, going to be watched next Friday by me. Today is Saturday night. We're actually going into midnight now. But yes, this video should be uploaded by the end of Sunday. If not, kind of into Monday there. But this really is something that I cannot wait to do. These films, of course, and this one, it's just always a great one that sparks this energy. This excitement. It's grounded, but this one is so exciting for me. This film, I love these kinds of thrillers, action films, of course, with this legendary character. And once you've seen, more and more Bond films you watch, you kind of get invested just in this character. This kind of persona, this creation. No matter who plays, this character, there's always the fact that, throughout an entire series, he is James Bond in some form. It's always more and more growing on me, this character. And I've always loved this character since I was a kid, of course, watching many of these Bond films, most of them at least on VHS, DVD, and now, of course, Blu-ray behind me. And here it is, of course, this very standard, unfortunately, but this set, and here it is, of course, the one I started with, the original kind of Bond films here, leading up to, of course, The Spy Who Loved Me. And yes, I cannot wait to go through this, and of course the next two in that set there. Once again, this is just one of my favourite things. Really, James Bond, and yes, I think Dr. No is great, and yeah, not the best, but really, it's one of them Bond films that I just love. I really appreciate. But yes, Dr. No, many of the elements here, and a great Bond film for me. A great film. It's definitely one that I love. It's on my favourite films list, and yes, it's just sincere. It's charming. It's humorous, of course, but not too much, not too over the top. The gadgets, are very enjoyable. But not too much. Of course, great Bond girl. You've got a great other, main character that's with Bond, of course, with Quarrel, John Kitzmiller, brilliant in the film, in my opinion. Joseph Wiseman is good as Dr. No, and a very well written character indeed. The plot, the action, the way this film is put together, the scenery, of course, the wonderful locations, and the feel, and that kind of that basis of just narrative progression is so clear in this film. It's very simple in the way it's told. Plot that's definitely got its turns, but it is clear storytelling, of course, and that's the thing. It really is just a great piece of cinema, in my opinion, and a film that's just so exciting and so great. Yes, epic, smooth, of course, and very relaxing to watch at the same time as being, tense and thrilling, and just action-packed. So yes, the original Bond, Sean Connery in the original Bond film, officially Eon Productions, and yes, just legendary, really, in my opinion. And yes, thanks for watching, of course. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. This should be great to discuss, of course, these Bond films. It's been something I've been looking forward to since the last kind of rewatch of Bond. A few months after, I kind of thought, I can't wait to do that again, and who knows, I'll maybe do that again on the YouTube channel. I thought at the time, maybe not though. I've just gone through 24 and done them reviews, and of course it's very it's different. It took me a while to make videos back then, and I was very, in between. It was often a couple of weeks before I uploaded, of course. But now, it's very much a different thing, and I feel comfortable, reviewing films again. Of course, I do re-reviews, and this is, of course, another entire series rewatch, of course, and it's a bit different to my, initial kind of standalone re-reviews of films, but this is definitely something that I can't wait to do. It's something that I love, talking about Bond, and yes, of course, you viewers, this is who we talk to on this channel, is everyone in the comments. So of course, can't wait to do that, and tell me your thoughts on this film. What do you think? Is it one of your favourites, or is it not one of your favourites? Of course, everyone has their own kind of rankings of this diverse, unique, brilliant series, in my opinion. It's always great to see how people, of course, would rank every single film, really. And of course, Doctor No is definitely, in my top 10 currently. And yes, as always, thanks for watching my review.